Faithfully, we light the chalice week after week, however fragile the light seems, however easily it quivers in the air, however modest its warmth, however small the circle of light it casts. This chalice is not fueled by wax, but by hope, kindness, commitment, and compassion. It is steadied, its warmth increased in the hearts of all who are gathered here. So,
I couldn't see it. Is it burning?
beautifully,
Yep. We should cut the candle down so the sides down so the flames show.
I'm tipping it up slightly, so maybe.
We're gonna cut it off. I got a knife in my pocket.
Yeah, I
Just
think
cut that off.
later would be fabulous, fabulous. So these words. When all the people of the world love, then the strong will not overpower the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The wealthy will not mock the poor. The honored will not disdain the humble. The cunning will not deceive the simple. These words from a 4th century before the Common Era Chinese philosopher, even before Lao Tzu, whose name was Mao Tzu. So, if you turn in your hymnal, we'll be reading in unison next the covenant. 473.
73.
473. All right. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law.
This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
And the responsive reading is number 662.
Give me 1 second. Got it.
By A. Powell Davies, Strange and Foolish Walls. The years of all of us are short, our lives precarious.
Our days and nights go hurrying on, and there is scarcely time to do the little that we might.
Yet we find time for bitterness, for petty treason and evasion.
What can we do to stretch our hearts enough to lose their littleness?
Here we are, all of us, all upon this planet, bound together in a common destiny.
Living our lives between the briefness of the daylight and the dark.
Kindred in this, each lighted by the same precarious, flickering flame of life, how does it happen that we are not kindred in all else?
How strange and foolish are these walls of separation that divide us.
And now, just to settle into the spirit, let us all seated sing Spirit of Life, which is 123.
truth. In the wind, rise in the sea, moon in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots only grow, will set me free. Spirit of love, come to me, come to me.
I used to call it a message for all ages. And now it's message for the ages. I think it kind of fits. And this is from Pieces Every Step, a book by Thich Nhat Hanh. And it has in it it's a collection of extraordinary stories. But this one is called Call Me by My True Names. And he's remembering as he begins time that he's living in Southeast Asia. And this sets the context. And it's about the boat people of that period of time in the late 60s and 70s. There are many young girls, boat people, who are raped by sea pirates. Even though the United Nations and many countries try to help the government of Thailand prevent that kind of piracy, sea pirates continue to inflict much suffering on the refugees. One day, we received a letter, and this was in his Plum Village in France. One day we received a letter telling us of a young girl on a small boat who was raped by a Thai pirate. She was only 12, and she jumped into the ocean and drowned herself. When you first learn of something like that, you get angry at the pirate. You naturally take the side of the girl. As you look more deeply, you will see it differently. If you take the side of the little girl, then it's easy. You only have to take a gun and shoot the pirate, but you can't do that. In my meditation, I saw that if I had been born in the village of the pirate and raised in the same conditions as he was, there's a great likelihood that I would become a pirate. I saw that many babies are born along the Gulf of Siam, hundreds every day. And if we educators, social workers, politicians, and others do not do something about the situation, in 25 years, a number of them will become sea pirates. That is certain. If you or I were born today in those fishing villages, we may become sea pirates in 25 years. If you take a gun and shoot the pirate, you shoot all of us, because all of us are to some extent responsible for this state of affairs. After this, he wrote the following meditation. Call me by my true names. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving, to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am a mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the water, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I'm a frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond. And I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am also the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands. And I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please, call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can see all that my joy and pain are one. Please, call me by my true names, so I can wake up and the door of my heart could be left open, the door of compassion. That's the reading, the message for all ages. And now, joys and sorrows. These words
Not those.
begin with these words by Carl Sandburg. There is only one horse on the earth, and his name is all horses. There is only one bird in the air, and her name is all wings. There is only one fish in the sea, and the fish's name is all fins. There is only man in the world, and his name is all men. There is only one woman in the world, and her name is all women. There is only one child in the world, and the child's name is all children. There is only one maker in the world, and that maker's children cover the earth, and they are named all God's children. So for a few moments, just let's be quiet and thoughtful. Just for a few moments, peacefully with each other. Amen. When I was last with you, and it was February 27th, a month ago today, children were still going to school in Ukraine with their names, addresses, and blood types pinned to their clothing. Just a month ago today. Life was disrupted, but there was still a measure of disbelief that the Russian tanks and military on the country's border would come to a full-out conflict. I remember hearing an interview with a Ukrainian a few weeks before as the 40-mile convoy of Russian tanks was reported on the move, saying to an international news reporter, "Oh, we're used to having the Russians in our backyard. We've been here before." Since then, and this is a report from the BBC 3 days ago, 10 million people have now fled their homes in Ukraine because of the Russian invasion. This information from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, as well as the 3.6 million who have left for neighboring countries. Another estimated 6.5 million people are thought to be displaced inside the war-torn country itself. This is clearly not the conflict that the gentleman I heard speak, or the majority of Ukrainians had bargained on. Or I dare say, a month ago, not what we had imagined. So I knew when I would be coming back a month later today. So I'd begun planning what I might say, and it was a celebration of spring. I planned to celebrate the end of a long Western New York winter and passing the 2-year mark of COVID shutdowns. I planned on reporting on snowdrops and aconites, the emerging green sprouts of daffodils in my yard, and on one of the warm days that we had recently, hearing peepers for the first time this spring. As in my practice, I started gathering readings, poems and well-loved passages from Max Kutz's Seasons of the Self. You know that now. And I began with a poem by a poet I just learned about. So I'm going to share that with you. Her name, Angelina Weld Jimke. At the spring dawn, I watched the dawn come, watched the spring dawn come, and the red sun shouldered his way up through the gray, through the blue, through the lilac mists. The quiet of it, the goodness of it. And one bird awoke, sang, whirred a blur of moving black against the sun, sang again far off. And I stretched my arms to the redness of the sun, stretched to my fingertips, and I laughed. Ah, it is good to be alive, good to love, at the dawn, at the spring dawn. So gathering these poems and the opening gifts of the season, even if I drove through a snowstorm. As we all. I was reminded today, or the last couple of days, of a play I attended years ago. It was set in the 1940s, and it was hosted by a group of Holocaust survivors in Rochester. And the play featured 2 voices. And they were reading from 2 journals. One was a young girl from the United States, and the other from Europe. The writers were both girls in their teens. And the writer from the United States in this play described her summer vacation eating ice cream or walking with her friends, pretending not to look at the boys nearby. The writer in Europe, also Jewish, described an ordinary summer day in Haifa. The same day, but a world apart. We are a world apart from Ukraine now too, where it is early spring as well. Meaning that the sun is warming this earth once again, and that there are green shoots breaking through the ground. The same ground that has been built open for trenches and trenches for mass graves. I frankly didn't know quite what to do with the service today. So, as I said, as is my wont, I started looking for voices that I could listen to. And in this case, it's a voice in a book that I've had on my shelf since the early 2000s. It's a book by Christopher Hedges about his years as a veteran war correspondent. The title of the book is War is Force That Gives Us Meaning. Here it is. War is a force that gives us meaning. I turn to it. What is this that besieges us and has for millennia? What is our endless seduction as a species with war? And this is what Christopher Hedges offered in the introduction. I learned early on that war forms its own culture. The rush of battle is a potent and lethal addiction. For war is a drug, peddled by mythmakers, historians, war correspondents, filmmakers, novelists, and the state. All of whom endow it with qualities it often does possess. Excitement, exoticism, power, chances to rise above our small stations of life. Then he sums it up. The enduring attraction of war is this. It can give us purpose, a reason for living. War is an enticing elixir. It gives us resolve, a cause. He proceeds with details of his own experience and the experience of his colleagues. It's a chilling read. What I didn't find in his compelling account, however, was what I was looking for. I was looking for and grappling with what is the place of evil? What is the place of evil in war? And I searched the index. I'd read the book. I searched the index. Just maybe I missed it because I did skim a little bit, but I hadn't. There's nothing under evil in this book. So I then turned to our hymnal. You could turn to it right now if you wanted to, and thought, okay, evil, definitely evil. I found a selection of readings and hymns, so there are two sections in the hymnal. And they're both between evening and evolution. No evil. So then I went to the UUA website, and there I finally found Thinking Partners. But Thinking Partners not from this current conflict, but from a number of years ago, early on in the Iraq War and the war with Afghanistan. What I found on the website is actually a pamphlet edited by the Reverend William Schultz, addressing Unitarian Universalist views of evil. He begins, Unitarian Universalists have had relatively little to say about the concept of evil over the generations. And he knows whereof he speaks. Not only has he been a UU minister for generations and the president of the denomination, but he also was president of Amnesty International for well over a decade. From his vantage point, he continues. This is partly because we have spent our energy, our denominational energy, reassuring people that human beings are fundamentally good and that these good impulses will ultimately prevail. And it is partly because, having abandoned traditional Christian understanding of sin and salvation, we have had to develop new theological tools with which to meet evil. As I learned only too poignantly during my years in human rights work, acts that deserve to be called evil, enlisting children as soldiers or sex slaves, for example, are only all too common. Cruelty is real. So how do we understand such cruel acts, and what can we do about them? Ultimately, our answers will need to be political and theological, personal and corporate. Along with intimations of goodness, evil lies coiled in almost every human heart, latent in almost every human enterprise. The goal is not to vanquish it, that is too much to hope for, but to temper it. And naming a phenomenon, as our authors do here, is always the first step towards its taming. And a little bit from a few of the other authors. Adrian Graham. Evil is an activity of humankind. Natural disasters are not evil, and attributing evil to the supernatural does not address the reality that we human beings, with our agency of choice and capacity for corruption, create evil every day by choosing action or inaction at odds with our better selves. Evil is a strong word, but we should not shy away from using it. We should use its definition. We should use it. Doing so, we wrest power from it and enable ourselves to bring about good. Our human agency to do so is our only certainty. And from the Reverend Chris Boyce, you may remember his name because his church in Knoxville, Tennessee, was the site of a mass killing. It was a Sunday service and it was a children's service, and the children were performing any. We tend to associate the word evil with big events that make the headlines, war, genocide, and mass shootings. But I will never forget a smaller moment when I felt I was in the presence of evil. It was during a conversation with someone who took pleasure in hurting others and who inflicted suffering, sat back and smiled. To feel remorse for our harmful actions is to reaffirm our humanity. To apologize and make amends is to restore connection. To take joy from another person's sorrow, on the other hand, is to lose a very important part of who we are, the part that makes us fully human. As Jesus said, what does it profit us to gain the whole world and lose our soul? And from a sermon, also from years ago, these words by the Reverend Scott Alexander, from a sermon titled, "May Your Pillow Catch Fire." We must say no. We must say no to all who would slaughter innocent human beings in such evil ways. No, it is not acceptable. No, it is not acceptable. No, it is not acceptable. We will not trade with you, have an embassy on your soil until you stop this heinous, evil behavior. Of all the many spiritual responsibilities that fall to us as Unitarian Universalists, he wrote, none is more pressing than that of helping humanity to realize its holy interdependence, its indissoluble oneness. Goes on, I want my religion, I want my Unitarian Universalist faith to call upon me to ever enlarge the capacity of my heart, to challenge me towards goodness and mercy, even when it comes at great personal cost. I want a church which refuses to let me morally and spiritually separate myself from the trials and tribulations of my global brothers and sisters, wherever and however I find them. I want a faith, if you will, that keeps me awake by God, wherever there is as much as one human being somewhere in need of my compassion or care. I read from the beginning of Chris Hedges' book, and I want to give him a chance to speak again. He is speaking after he's left this work of decades. And he is reflecting back. And he's reflecting anew because he is also a graduate of Harvard Divinity School. And from the conclusion of his book, these messages of his hard-earned, hard-learned wisdom. The cost of war is often measured in the physical destruction of a country's infrastructure, in the blast buildings, factories, and bridges, in the toll of the dead. But probably worse is the psychological and spiritual toll. In the beginning, war looks and feels like love. But unlike love, it gives nothing in return, but an ever-deepening dependence, like all narcotics on the road to self-destruction. To survive as a human being is possible only, he writes, through love. And when thanatos, the Greek word for the lure of death and evil, is ascendant, the instinct must be to reach out to those we love, to see in them all the divinity, pity, and pathos of the human, and to recognize love in the lives of others, even those with whom we are in conflict. love that is like our own. Love in its mystery has its own power. It alone gives us meaning that endures. It alone allows us to embrace and cherish life. Love has power both to resist in our natures what we know we must resist, and to affirm what we know we must affirm. One of the first things we shared together today was our covenant. Simple words to say. It's not so simple to do. So as we reaffirm and covenant with each other time and time again, love is the spirit of this truth. May we never, and perhaps never more than now, forget the importance of these words in shaping who we are individually. May we make it so. Amen. The very first hymn in our hymnal has the word evil. May nothing